The average amount of money that has been spent on video games in the average household in Japan has actually hit a record high. That is according to a new report by its government, and it's kind of funny to think of actually how low the number is. If you're a gamer, you can probably know how much you've maybe spent in the last year on video games, and it's probably way more than the average household. But the thing is, when we're talking about averages, we got to think there's families with no gamers at all. There's elderly households, stuff like that. So the number might seem a little shockingly low, but yes, the average is actually the highest it has ever been. So it says Japan's Ministry of Internal Affairs and Communications, or MIC, that is a part of its government. They recently released the results of its Family Income and Expenditure Survey for 2025 last year. Now it says, according to the data, per household spending on both game consoles and game software reached record highs in 2025. So it says the stats are based on a sample of 9,000 Japanese households of 2 or more people, with console and software spending viewed as separate categories. So the key thing is that in both of those categories, it looks like they are at record highs. That's pretty crazy. The software I get, but as far as the gaming consoles, at first I thought there's no way that it reached record highs, but then I thought, oh wait, the Switch 2 came out in 2025. Obviously that was huge. So as for the numbers, it says, according to the survey, the average annual spending on game consoles among Japanese households in 2025 was about 2,000 yen, specifically 2,044 yen. That is about 14 US dollars. That is per year spending on gaming consoles. It says this is the first time since 2010 that average spending on consoles has exceeded 2,000 yen, and the figure represents more than a threefold increase compared to 2024's 616 yen average. That is insane to think that it basically 3x'd in a year. Definitely a lot. Now, it says previously the highest spending year for consoles has been 2020, when COVID-19 lockdowns pushed spending to 1,548 yen. The 2025 average surpasses this previous record by 32%. So, as I said, $14 a year spent on consoles, spent on gaming per household doesn't sound like much, but again, you got a ton of households who just don't game at all, so you got to factor that into the equation, of course. And also, what's crazy is that this is all despite certain factors where maybe some inflation and some rising costs maybe would have driven things down. You would have thought the average spending would have gone down in this category, but it went up. It says that in 2025, the spending on food in Japan rose by 5.5%, but it does say, however, when you take into account inflation, it says food spending actually fell by 1.2%, suggesting consumers are cutting back on everyday purchases amid the rising cost of living. So yeah, with a higher cost of living, you would think that the spending on video games would have gone down, but it went up. Definitely huge for the video game industry in Japan. Though the average might not seem that high, this is a pretty big deal. It 3x'd in just a year. That, to me, is insane.